Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and I'm here with a look at Master Shooter Collectibles' debut pieces, the Mega Gun and the Brown King. Master Shooter Collectibles is the end result of a very independent fan design that started off as an experiment prototyped through Shapeways 3D printing services. Both figures have their own unique bios written in a friendly homage to many of the more memorable English paragraphs found on somewhat questionable Chinese toy packaging. It's a goofy little story crowned by the image of unicorn hidden behind each figure. Mega Gun and Brown King evoke the imagery of the old microchange gun robot that happened to become the lead villain of a popular 80s television cartoon. The sculpt is simple but decent. Details are primarily in the face and stomach, both of which are accented with the majority of the paint apps. Mega Gun does have a more interesting palette, though Brown King's monotone gives him a very individual style by comparison. As for posability, the main joints on these guys are in the arms, where they've got a ball-jointed elbow, so they kind of have two joints there, and a kind of ball-jointed shoulder, although the ball is actually situated deeper inside the shoulder blade for transformation. The legs do look kind of bricky, don't they? That's because they're all pegged together with this additional accessory that you don't actually have to leave in here, but I kind of like that it has storage, because if you don't like the legs to be so immobile, you can detach them from that peg, and leave it attached to this gun barrel piece, so his ball-jointed hips can now move freely and he can Cossack dance. I was notified, however, to make sure that you all know that you want to be careful when you do this, because, you see, this part pegs in there, so if you peg that in, you can then remove these parts. Don't pull the legs too hard when you do this, because, I was informed that if you yank the legs too hard out to the sides to detach them, then he'll suffer a horrific groin injury, which I believe is a very cute way of saying that if you yank the legs out too hard to the sides, the posts of his groin will snap off and you'll have a one-legged Brown King. While the posability is pretty minimal, I think it actually is pretty neat for something that's this size. If there's one thing I would have liked to see, it would be a neck swivel, but otherwise you can get a pretty decent amount of character out of these guys. They can also kind of bow a little bit due to the transformation, so especially if you just leave this clip piece off, then you get a decent range for such a tiny robot. You can have him running around, you can kind of use this third leg as a bit of a tripod if you pull it out a little ways, then you can have them cheat a little bit to balance in these sort of poses, and these little guys are just chilling out here, having a little picnic, or shouting at each other, or shooting at each other. But hey, what's a picnic if you don't have other people to picnic with? So for size comparisons, here's how big they are next to a Perfect Effect blue robot who happens to look like a cassette. And as you can see, they're smaller than he is, and if you know how small Perfect Effect robots are, that's pretty small. So these guys are quite tiny, and to me that makes all of their sculpting that does exist even more impressive. As for another comparison, here's a strangely topical Legends toy that may or may not have something to do with the imagery evoked by these guys. I'm not really sure, I'm just making some calls I heard from executive management, but overall, here's how big these guys are in comparison to some other toys you might think of when you look at them. So they are tiny, yes, but they're also about half the price of any given Perfect Effect toy. So you won't be dropping $30 on a single one of these guys. Their size is also something that helps their alternate mode work out a little bit better, because yes, they do transform. So let's Master Shoot-It-ize! For a transformation designed and prototyped via 3D modeling and Shapeways, I find the scheme rather clever in how it primarily uses the arms and torso to alter the shape of the figure. Unfortunately, the arm cannon needs to be removed and replaced to complete the conversion, but it also helps lock things together, so I find it quite forgivable. Also, for now, I'm going to remove these ring things. I'll explain why later on. Just trust me. It's pretty easy to see what Mega Gun and Brown King are homaging in their alternate modes, and I think they do a pretty good job of it. The color placings are well done, though Brown King's gray scope and barrel feel a little bit out of place at first. The surface sculpted ridges are also pretty cool, especially given that this evolved from a Shapeways project. I also think this gun mode looks a tad better than TFC's Targetroid Mega Zooms, though I have not actually messed with one in person. So we're looking at a pair of long-barreled guns, and again, you know, when you look at these, there's one thing you kind of think about immediately, which is what do they look like next to something like this. So here's that one comparison I'm sure a lot of folks would want to see. As you can see, this one's a bit bigger and has an orange tip, but even if you ignore the orange tip, it is still a little bit bigger. However, there's one advantage that these guys have. Can you see what it is? This guy's grip is huge, makes for a good-looking gun that only one mold can actually hold properly, that being the Masterpiece Seekers. These guys have a peg, a 4mm to 5mm stepped peg. That opens up some options, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at them. Thanks to the stepped 4mm peg hole, figures with 4mm holes in their fists, such as Classics Rodimus, can hold this gun really well. It's really snug in there, and feels like it was made to be. And it does step up to a 5mm peg hole, which means that dudes with larger fist holes can also try to hold it. Unfortunately, I've found that the 5mm peg hole's a little bit loose on mine. It fits in there and it sits in there, but it also comes out really easily. This could be fixed by simply adding a layer of future floor polish or nail polish to the larger part of this peg. Once thickened, though, this thing will actually also fit into a MechTech port rather nicely, which opens up the play value of these guys quite a bit. And you can have amazing scenes such as a van with a large gun sticking out of its roof, driving towards Optimus Prime holding a similar looking gun that is colored brown. This is the stuff dreams are made of, people! Speaking of which, this thing, what is it for? Well, as you all saw, it did actually clip on here quite well, and for everything I said about these peg holes being a bit loose, this actually grips on quite tightly, so I'm not sure if it's something happening on my toys or on this thing, but it is, as I said, very easy to fix. Just put a layer of something on there and it'll be snug. This thing is for a very special function that has to do with this thing. If you pull off one of these missile launchers, you'll see there's a ring there. And this piece can slide over that ring, specifically slide around more like this, and then it doesn't hold on by itself entirely, but then when you put this back on, this kind of locks it in place. Boom! And now Starscream's got a mega gun underslung on his wings. You can actually do this with two of them. I wonder what that would look like. That's what it would look like. Movie magic, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is another draw of these guys, is that you can undersling them on the classic Seeker mold and make it look way more heavily armed than it was before. The Master Shooter Gunbots are a quirky and neat pair of accessorizing items. While they aren't intricately engineered or coated in painted detail, they have a simple charm and pull off a lot of their functions pretty decently. Having a stepped 4 to 5mm peg is their biggest draw, especially with the advent of MechTech ports. Do check other reviews to see whether or not the problem I had with mine is widespread. I may have just had some bad luck. And as I said, it is a very easy problem to fix. Though I have found a couple 5mm ports that these guys do peg into a bit more solidly than Classics Prime's fist. I'd say these guys are worth taking a look at, especially if you want to support a highly independent and small-scale project that's come out of our own fandom. At the time of this recording, they are still exclusive to CapturedPrey.com, so head by there if you do want to pick them up. For all their simplicity, they are kind of adorable. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and trust me, be careful when you pull their legs apart. The groin injury is very hard to rebound from. I hope this video has been helpful to you in some way. I'd stick around, but I think I pulled something. Urgh!